Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, May 1st, 2020. It's time to plan for the post-crisis world. Now, that's the title of an article by Nathan Lewis that was posted on the Forbes website. In his article, Mr. Lewis makes a case for how we should move forward after the hysteria over the COVID-19 crisis winds down. Now, here are some of his observations. We should use the situation created by the crisis to evaluate what we can do to improve our lives. People today don't understand what liberty and freedom meant in 1789 in terms of economic policy. It meant no direct taxes, such as an income tax. At that time, the federal government was funded with indirect taxes, a retail sales tax, and tariffs. He notes that we should place more responsibility for the implementation of government programs on the states. The average state congressman in Massachusetts has 41,000 constituents. The average congressman in the Federal House of Representatives has 747,000. After a long period of war and hyperinflation in which the old order was truly blown to smithereens, some Americans got together to decide what to do about it. They created the United States, a new country based on the magic formula of low taxes and stable money, and it has become the most successful country of all time. Now, Mr. Lewis is a fan of indirect taxes, and he does mention the fair tax, but concludes that we should have a flat income tax, a direct tax, and a value-added tax, an indirect tax. Now, why the direct tax and not the fair tax? Well, Mr. Lewis is obviously a bright and thoughtful person, but my guess is that he's bought into the myth that the ruling class and their minions in Congress will never give up the benefits the federal income tax provides to them, even though it costs the rest of us dearly. The veil of omnipotence cast by the ruling class and their minions in the media and in D.C. is crumbling, and we're starting to see not blackness, but the blue sky. This means their control is slipping. The decline of trust. Now, one of the consequences of the COVID-19 crisis is that the American people trust those in authority and those in the media even less than before. This is one of the reasons that more and more of us are paying little or no attention to the pronouncements of state and federal officials and to the media. Our information is now coming directly from what we believe to be more reliable sources. Medical doctors and scientists who are actually dealing with the virus. Now, fortunately, this information is widely available on the internet, and the truth is starting to expose the baselessness behind many of the hysterical claims made by some government officials and in the media. While trust in the media in D.C. has been slipping for many years, the decline is now accelerating rapidly. This crisis has also led us to question some of the ways in which we interact with other people. Through the increased use of FaceTime, Zoom, Skype, and numerous other online applications, we're finding that we can have meaningful interactions with family and friends without them being physically present. Many students are participating in classes from home. Now, one of the direct effects of the virus is that many businesses that were forced to have their employees work from home are now planning to reduce the number of employees working in the office. They're finding that the various technologies now available make this workable. After the schools and daycare facilities reopen, parents working from home can forego the time and expense of commuting and perform their jobs from home. This change will drastically reduce the amount of office space needed, and it will likely lead to many office buildings either having to find other uses for the vacated space or they'll go bankrupt. The use of telemedicine will greatly increase. Already there are products that allow patients to do their own EKGs, take their own blood pressure and temperature, and communicate all of this to their medical practitioner. Instead of waiting for hours in the medical office, surrounded by other people suffering from a variety of infectious diseases, a patient will get a call from the doctor to explain their symptoms. If needed, The doctor can provide a prescription that can either be picked up at a pharmacy's drive-through window or delivered right to the patient's door. Most of us who are used to the old way will have to adjust and be willing to adopt the new normal. With fewer people commuting, the use of petroleum products in the U.S. is predicted to be much lower as we go forward. This means that the myriad of companies that depend on the increasing demand for petroleum products will likely see a decline in their stock prices. Now, many of us regret that our children and grandchildren can't enjoy the freedom we enjoyed of getting on our bicycles and going to meet other kids at the park without having to be nervously watched over by our anxious parents. However, our children and grandchildren have opportunities now that we never even dreamed of. It's time to give them an opportunity that we haven't had, to experience life without the income payroll tax, and to take control of their lives and their government by enacting the FAIRtax. In conclusion, while a few of us can accurately predict how our lives will be affected as we reopen the country, we should look at what is obviously broken and fix it as best we can. Now, one thing that obviously is broken is the federal income tax system. Now, instead of the confusion and delays around the various government payments to individuals, wouldn't it be much easier if we had the FAIRtax to simply increase the prebate being sent to each family? If you want to help people with no income, then increase the family consumption allowance so that a family of four can spend not $34,000 and pay no FAIRtax, but $68,000. This would increase the family's monthly prebate from $652 to $1,304. And then when the crisis is over in a few months, just return the family consumption allowance back to its original level. Now, isn't that a more sane and efficient way to help our citizens? Now, there's an old lawyer joke about how you know a lawyer is lying. His lips are moving. Now, most of our fellow citizens now believe that applies to most of the media and most of Congress. We know one thing for sure about the ruling class and their minions in the media and in D.C. What's good for them will always be a much higher priority than what's good for the rest of us. Now, isn't it time to rise up and take our government back? Never Let a Good Crisis Go to Waste is based on the points made in Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. On page 89 in the section marked Communication, it says, quoting, "In the arena of action, a threat or a crisis becomes almost a precondition to communication," end of quote. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines radical as advocating extreme measures to retain or restore a political state of affairs. Our forefathers who broke away from England were radicals. They opposed British control over their lives. Now, isn't it time that we oppose the control that the ruling class and their minions in the media and D.C. seek to have over us? If you're ready to take a very significant step to wrest control of the government from a small group of corrupt people and regain the ability for all to prosper, go to FAIRtax.org and join us. Then contact your members of Congress and the President and demand that Congress pass the FAIRtax, the only truly fair tax.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.